All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for part two of our deep dive into current affairs. It's January 22nd, 2025, and we've got a lot to cover today, specifically for you, the UPSC aspirant.
Absolutely. Yesterday we explored the intricacies of international relations and those pressing environmental policies. But today we're shifting gears. We'll be tackling economic justice, dissecting India's evolving strategic partnerships, and even diving into the fascinating world of cutting-edge medical technology. So buckle up. It's going to be a thought-provoking ride.
I'm ready. Let's start with a report that really grabbed my attention. It's titled, Takers Not Makers, The Unjust Poverty and Unearned Wealth of Colonialism. This report shines a light on the just staggering global wealth disparity and how it connects directly to the legacy of colonialism, both past and present.
Yeah, it's a pretty hard-hitting analysis. The report actually claims that billionaires' wealth has tripled just in the last year alone. Think about that. While billions of people are still struggling to survive on less than $7 a day. I mean, it's hard to even grasp that kind of contrast, isn't it?
It really is. The sheer scale of it is, overwhelming. And what's really striking is how the report links this disparity directly to colonialism, both historical and in its more subtle modern forms. The argument is that the wealth accumulated by certain nations, certain individuals, is really a direct result of the exploitation of resources and people during colonial rule.
Exactly. I mean, the report even gives a specific example, highlighting the staggering $64.82 trillion drained from India just during British rule. And get this, 33.8 trillion of that went directly to the top 10% of earners in Britain. It's not just a historical footnote, These figures have lasting implications impacting economic structures, power dynamics, even today.
Like a ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
This historical exploitation continues to shape global wealth distribution, even now. And, the report doesn't shy away from tackling what it calls neocolonialism, this idea that, these colonial-like power dynamics are still at play, but in a more, disguised way.
Absolutely. Think about unfair trade practices, the kind that favored developed nations, right? Or multinational corporations exploiting resources in developing countries. Or even something like the digital divide, which limits access to information and opportunities for so many. These are all examples of how neocolonialism can manifest.
So how does all of this connect with you, the UPSC aspirant? Well, grasping these historical and ongoing systems of inequality, it's crucial for anyone aiming to craft effective policies. It's not just about crunching numbers and economic data. It's about recognizing those deep-rooted power imbalances that continue to shape our world.
I couldn't agree more. Just consider this. Let's say you're tasked with developing a policy to address poverty in India. Wouldn't it be essential to understand the historical context, the impact of colonialism, and how it continues to affect economic opportunities today?
Right, that historical context is key. Now let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about India's role on the global stage. We've seen some interesting developments lately, especially in the relationship between India and the European Union. For example, India has outlined 6 core principles to strengthen trade and investment with the EU.
It's an important partnership, that's for sure. And it's becoming even more crucial as concerns grow about China's expanding global influence. It's about forging those strategic alliances, working with like-minded democracies that share India's commitment to a rules-based international order.
And, when you connect this back to the report on global inequality, it becomes even clearer why diversifying those partnerships and strengthening economic ties with nations that uphold democratic values, it's vital for India.
Right. It's a multifaceted strategy. Of course, it's about economic growth, but it's also about strategic autonomy. It's about ensuring that India has a strong voice on the global stage, a voice that's independent of any single power.
And that brings us to another important topic. The challenges faced by major global institutions, we're talking the UN, the WHO, the WTO.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of debate about the need for reforms within these organizations.
Oh, absolutely. And we can't overlook the impact of the U.S. withdrawal from key institutions. I mean, what does that signal for the world order? More specifically, how does it impact India's place in it? How can India effectively navigate these complex international dynamics? How can it ensure that its interests are protected? These are the kinds of questions that really separate, good policymakers from truly exceptional ones.
It's about thinking critically, right?
Yeah.
It's not just knowing the facts. It's about analyzing those situations. It's about understanding the historical context, considering multiple perspectives, all in order to actually formulate effective solutions. And that's what we're aiming for, right? To be truly exceptional.
Now, let's shift our focus inwards. We've got to talk about internal affairs. The Uniform Civil Code, or UCC for short, is back in the news. Uttarakhand is preparing to potentially become the first state to actually enact it. This is a significant development. Aspiring policymakers, folks like yourselves, you need to grasp the nuances of this complex issue.
Now, for our listeners who might not be as familiar with the UCC, it essentially aims to create a single set of personal laws that would be applicable to all citizens, regardless of their religion. We're talking about areas like marriage, divorce, adoption, inheritance, succession, things that are currently governed by different religious laws.
Yeah, the idea behind the UCC is rooted in Article 44 of the Constitution, which is part of the directive principles of state policy. It basically guides the state to work towards establishing a UCC for all citizens.
And proponents of the UCC argue that it's essential for promoting gender equity, for fostering social cohesion, and for modernizing Indian society. They see it as a way to, counter outdated practices and ensure a more just, more equal legal framework for everyone.
But of course, there are some significant challenges and concerns regarding the UCC's implementation. One of the key challenges is balancing individual rights with state intervention. Article 25 of the Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, and there are specific provisions that protect tribal customs and beliefs.
So it's a delicate balancing act, isn't it? How do you ensure equality and justice for everyone while also respecting religious freedom and cultural sensitivities?
Yeah.
That's really the question at the heart of this debate. And, as future policymakers, it's a question that you're going to need to grapple with.
Absolutely. And, we can't ignore the potential opposition from various religious groups and leaders. There are those who fear that the UCC might interfere with their religious freedom and customs. It's a highly nuanced issue with strong arguments on both sides, which is why it's such a key area of focus for any UPSC aspirant.
So let me put this to you. Imagine you're tasked with drafting a policy recommendation on the UCC. How would you approach this complex issue? What factors would you consider? What kind of research would you undertake?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one that really requires careful consideration of, the historical context, the constitutional provisions, the diverse perspectives of all the various stakeholders. And of course, you've got to weigh the potential benefits and challenges of actually implementing such a code. It's about finding that balance between individual rights and social cohesion, respecting those cultural and religious sensitivities, but at the same time striving for a just and equitable society. It's not easy.
And this is where those analytical skills, that critical thinking that we've been talking about, this is where it all comes into play.
Yeah.
It's not just about memorizing facts. It's about understanding the complexities of the issue, formulating a well-reasoned, nuanced perspective. Now, before we jump into our rapid-fire news round, let's touch on an area where India is truly emerging as a global leader: digital healthcare. It's incredible to see how technology is being used to bridge the healthcare gap between urban and rural areas.
Oh, absolutely. India is making some remarkable strides in this area. You see innovative initiatives like the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission and the Isanjivani telemedicine service. These programs are connecting millions of people to healthcare providers no matter where they're located. It's making quality healthcare more accessible, more affordable.
It's about harnessing the power of technology, right? To empower individuals and create a more equitable healthcare landscape. And it's not just about domestic progress. India's success here has the potential to inspire and inform global healthcare strategies, particularly in those low and middle income countries that face similar challenges.
Think about it. If you were tasked with developing a policy to improve healthcare access in, let's say, a remote, underserved region, how could you leverage India's digital healthcare model? What lessons could you learn from it? How could you adapt those solutions?
That's a great point. It's about looking beyond our borders, understanding those best practices from different contexts, and figuring out how to adapt those solutions to our own unique challenges. Because, let's face it, we can all learn from each other's experiences, right?
Exactly. Global collaboration, knowledge sharing, recognizing that we can all learn from each other's successes, each other's failures, to ultimately create a healthier future for everyone. All right, are you ready for our rapid fire round? We've got a lot to cover, from economic policies and defense technology to, even a groundbreaking development in the medical field. Are you ready?
Hit me with it. Let's do this.
All right, let's kick things off with the RBI. They've released some revised guidelines for asset reconstruction companies. Those are often called ARCs.
Right, ARCs. Now, they play a pretty critical role in our financial system. They're the ones who step in to, purchase those bad loans from banks.
Exactly. You see, ARCs help banks to clean up their balance sheets. They get those, non-performing assets off their books. This frees up the banks, lets them focus on their, core lending activities.
So for a UPSC aspirant, what's new in these revised guidelines? What should they be paying attention to?
One big change is the requirement for ARCs to have a board-approved policy for settling dues. The dues payable by borrowers. This policy has to cover things like eligibility criteria for one-time settlements, and it has to ensure transparency and accountability throughout the whole process.
So it sounds like the RBI is really trying to standardize the process and make it a lot more rigorous.
Exactly. They've also introduced a new layer of oversight for settlements involving large amounts, anything exceeding 1 crore rupees. An independent advisory committee will now be involved in these cases.
That makes sense. Having those expert eyes on those big-ticket settlements, it can help prevent any potential conflicts of interest, right? And ensure that everything is being done fairly.
Absolutely. The committee's recommendations, they'll then be reviewed by the board of directors, and that includes independent directors. So you've got a pretty thorough evaluation process now.
Okay, so stricter rules, more oversight for ARCs, definitely something to keep in mind for those economics-related questions on the UPSC exam.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about public perception, the Edelman Trust Barometer. This report, it gives us some valuable insights into the level of trust that people have in institutions. Institutions like the government, businesses, the media.
It's always interesting to see how that public trust fluctuates. What factors influence those perceptions?
Well, the latest report has revealed some pretty interesting findings. While trust in government remains, relatively high globally, there are some significant regional variations. For instance, India actually slipped to the 3rd position in terms of trust among the low-income population group.
Really?
Yeah, after China and Indonesia. However, within the high-income group, India ranked 4th.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying there's a difference there.
Yeah, this discrepancy, it highlights how those perceptions of trust can really differ depending on, socioeconomic factors. It suggests that different segments of society, they might face different challenges, have varying levels of confidence in their institutions.
This data can be incredibly valuable for policymakers.
Yeah.
Right? Understanding these nuances can help them to tailor policies, to create communication strategies that address the specific concerns of different groups.
Precisely. Now, let's take a quick detour into the legal world. Have you ever come across something called the doctrine of merger?
I have, but legal jargon can be, a bit much sometimes. Can you break it down for our listeners?
Yeah.
You make it a little easier to understand.
Sure. The doctrine of merger basically states that there can't be multiple conflicting decrees or orders governing the same issue at the same time.
So if a higher court makes a decision on a particular matter, any previous ruling from a lower court on that same issue, it becomes void, right?
Precisely. That lower court's order, it merges into the higher court's decision. This ensures consistency and clarity, in those judicial pronouncements.
So it's like a hierarchy of legal decisions,
Right.
with the higher court's ruling taking precedence.
Exactly. This principle, it's fundamental to our legal system. It ensures that there's no ambiguity, no contradiction in how the law is applied.
All right, well, let's shift focus to something a little more, exciting maybe. Defense technology, a topic that always gets a lot of attention, especially from UPSC aspirants.
Yeah, this year's Republic Day parade, it's going to showcase some pretty impressive advancements in India's defense capabilities. 2 systems that I think everyone will be watching are the Prelay missile and the Pinaka rocket system.
Now, the Prelay missile, it's been in the news a lot lately. What makes it so special?
Prelay is a short-range ballistic missile. It was developed by DRDO. It has a range of 150 to 500 kilometers. And it's highly mobile. It can be launched from a variety of platforms, making it a really versatile and potent weapon in India's arsenal.
And what about the Pinaka rocket system?
Pinaka, that's a multi-barrel rocket launcher system. It can hit targets up to 75 kilometers away. It's known for its accuracy and its firepower. Different variants of Pinaka have been developed, to meet specific operational requirements. This just enhances its effectiveness even more.
So both Prelay and Pinaka, they represent some pretty significant strides in India's indigenous defense industry.
Absolutely. Not only do these systems bolster India's defense capabilities, but they also showcase the country's growing technological prowess in the defense sector.
It's great to see India investing in research and development,
Yeah.
reducing its reliance on foreign suppliers. India was really emerging as a key player in the global defense landscape.
Now for some positive news. Let's talk about conservation efforts. In Jharkhand, the Forest Department is working hard to revive the dwindling population of Indian bison. This is happening at the Palamu Tiger Reserve.
The Indian bison, it's a magnificent creature, and of course a vital part of our ecosystem.
Sadly, they're currently listed as vulnerable by the IUCN. So those efforts in Jharkhand, they're crucial for their survival and for maintaining that biodiversity in the region.
And there are also initiatives underway in Karnataka, right, to protect the Chincholi Wildlife Sanctuary.
That's right. The Chincholi Wildlife Sanctuary, it holds a special distinction. It's actually the first dryland wildlife sanctuary in South India. This unique ecosystem is home to a diverse range of flora and fauna. Many of them are adapted to survive in those arid conditions.
It's inspiring to see India taking those proactive steps to conserve its natural heritage, from protecting species like the Indian bison to preserving these unique ecosystems like Chincholi.
Absolutely. These efforts, they highlight how important it is to balance development with environmental sustainability. Protecting our biodiversity, it's not just a moral imperative, it's crucial for our own well-being and for the health of the planet.
Now let's jump back into the digital realm. There's a new platform called the Entity Locker that's been generating some buzz. What is it and why should we care?
The Entity Locker, it's a cloud-based platform, and it's designed to revolutionize how businesses and organizations manage their documents. Think of it as a digital vault. You can securely store documents, share them, even verify them.
So it's like a one-stop shop for all your document needs, but with that added security and convenience.
Exactly. And one of the key features is that it uses Aadhaar authentication for secure access. So only authorized individuals can access those sensitive documents.
What about legal validity, for those documents stored on the platform?
The Entity Locker ensures the legal validity of those digital signatures, so it's a reliable, trustworthy platform for all your document needs.
This could be a game changer, especially for businesses and government agencies.
Yeah.
Anyone who deals with a huge volume of documents.
Absolutely. It has the potential to streamline those administrative processes, reduce that mountain of paperwork, and enhance transparency.
From streamlining document management to connecting millions to healthcare services, it's fascinating to see how technology is being used to tackle those real-world challenges.
Speaking of real-world challenges, let's take a moment to acknowledge the recent events surrounding Indonesia's Mount Ibu volcano. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, of the raw power of nature and the importance of disaster preparedness.
Over 1,000 eruptions in a single month. That's just incredible.
It's awe-inspiring and humbling. Events like this, they underscore the need for robust disaster management strategies and for early warning systems.
Absolutely. We need to be prepared to respond effectively, to mitigate those impacts, and ultimately to protect lives and livelihoods.
Now let's transition to a really exciting breakthrough in the medical field. CAR T-cell therapy. This is a revolutionary treatment for blood cancer, and it's just received approval here in India.
This therapy, it's been called a living drug. What makes it so unique?
Imagine harnessing the power of your own immune system to fight cancer. That's essentially what CAR T-cell therapy does. It involves extracting a patient's T cells. Those are a type of white blood cell, that play a key role in immunity.
Okay, and then those T cells, they're modified in a lab to specifically target and attack the cancer cells.
Precisely. It's a personalized approach to cancer treatment. The patient's own immune system is essentially re-engineered to fight the disease. And this therapy, it's shown remarkable success, especially in treating certain types of blood cancer.
This approval, this is a major milestone for India's healthcare sector. It offers a potentially life-saving option for blood cancer patients. It opens up so many possibilities.
And it's not just about progress within India. India's, foray into CAR T-cell therapy, it could have ripple effects globally. It could position the country as a leader in this cutting-edge field, inspire further research, more development in cell-based therapies around the world.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let's go back to that discussion on global partnerships and their importance for India.
You're talking about the recent collaboration between India and France, right? The one to assess maritime threats in the Indian Ocean region.
That's the one. This partnership really highlights those shared interests, right? The shared interests of India and France in ensuring stability and security in a region that's vital for both countries.
The Indian Ocean, it's a critical waterway, especially for global trade and energy flows. Ensuring its security, it's paramount, not just for India and France, but for the whole international community.
You've got piracy, terrorism, smuggling, all serious concerns that require collaborative efforts to address effectively.
This partnership shows India's proactive approach, to engaging with those like-minded nations, building strategic alliances, working towards a more secure, more stable world order.
And while we're talking about, those international groupings, I want to address a little slip-up we made in our previous episode. A minor geographical one.
Oh, what happened?
We mistakenly stated that Saudi Arabia had officially joined BRICS.
Hmm.
Just to clarify, while Saudi Arabia was offered membership, they haven't actually accepted it yet.
Thanks for pointing that out. Accuracy is so important, especially when we're talking about international relations. So to be clear, BRICS currently has 10 members, not 11.
Now, before we wrap up for today, let's highlight another amazing breakthrough in the medical field. The CDSCU, that's India's Drug Regulatory Authority, they've approved a second living drug for use here in the country.
Wow, 2 approvals for these cutting-edge therapies in such a short time. That's incredible. It really shows India's growing stature, in medical innovation.
This new therapy, it's called Cartemi, and just like that CAR-T cell therapy we discussed, it's designed to treat blood cancer. It works on the same principle, modifying the patient's own immune cells to target and destroy those cancer cells. Personalized medicine at its best.
This approval, it gives Indian patients access to another potentially life-saving treatment, and it strengthens India's position at the forefront of this field. It's exciting to see these advancements, and the impact they're having on healthcare.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. Economic policies, defense technology, conservation efforts, these groundbreaking medical advancements. But, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
That's right. We've given you a glimpse, a snapshot. But it's up to you to delve deeper, explore those different perspectives, and form your own, well-informed opinions.
Staying informed, that's just the first step. The real challenge is analyzing that information critically, connecting the dots, applying that knowledge to real-world scenarios.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one shaping those policies, driving innovation, making decisions that impact millions. That's the power of knowledge, of critical thinking. So keep learning, keep questioning, and never stop striving for excellence. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another deep dive into the news that matters most to you on your UPSC journey.
Wow. It's amazing to think about everything we've unpacked in this deep dive. We've analyzed those in-depth economic reports, explored India's international partnerships, delved into some pretty complex legal concepts, and even witnessed some groundbreaking breakthroughs in medical technology, all in just 2 parts. It's been a whirlwind. What stands out to you as, particularly significant?
It's the interconnectedness of it all that really strikes me. That report on global inequality, it highlighted the lasting impact of colonialism on wealth distribution, right? And that directly ties into India's strategic partnerships, those efforts to diversify economic ties, to forge alliances with those like-minded democracies. It's this intricate web, of historical forces, economic realities, and those, complex geopolitical strategies.
It's like those pieces of a puzzle. And it shows how important it is for aspiring policymakers, like our listeners, to have that comprehensive understanding of how these issues connect, how they influence each other. It's not about just memorizing those facts and figures. It's about seeing that bigger picture.
Exactly. It's about developing that critical thinking muscle, being able to connect those dots, analyze the information, see it from different angles, and come up with, well-informed solutions that consider all those nuances.
So for those of you prepping for the UPSC, think about how you can take this knowledge and apply it to those real-world scenarios. Imagine you're tasked with drafting a policy recommendation, let's say, on promoting sustainable development in India. How would you bring in your understanding of global economics, international partnerships, and those domestic challenges? It's about seeing those connections and coming up with solutions that address those root causes, not just those surface-level symptoms.
And don't forget, the UPSC exam, it's not just about reciting facts. It's about showcasing those analytical skills, that critical thinking, and your ability to apply what you know to those complex, real-world situations. The things we've talked about today, they're not just news headlines. They're opportunities for you to practice those skills, to really think critically, to develop your own informed perspective on those issues.
That's a great point. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive for today. We've explored some diverse topics, covered a lot of ground, and hopefully we've given you some valuable insights, some things to think about as you continue on your UPSC journey.
This is just the starting point, though. The world is always changing. New challenges pop up all the time. And the need for informed, engaged citizens is more important now than ever. So stay curious, stay informed, and never, ever stop questioning. You might be the one to come up with that next breakthrough, that innovative policy, that next step toward a better future.
So true. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up here. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.